Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're Astero Sophia Kairos, and I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and I'm here with my good friend Christa from Practical Astros. Hi, Christa.
Hi there.
And we're bringing you the week of June the 11th to the 18th. And here are the slides. We've got a full moon in Sagittarius coming up to kick us off, a big jovial Jupiterian full moon to look at. And then we've got the sun in Gemini squaring the nodes. Mars in Leo on the 15th will be squaring Uranus. And then Jupiter in Cancer, the biggest transit, I suppose, of the week. Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries. And Mars will enter Virgo, which will see us through the week. What do you think, Christa?
Yeah, I'm curious to talk about the sun squaring the nodes because we haven't really spent much time with that. You know, we have talked in length about Jupiter and Cancer squaring Saturn, and we've talked a little bit about Mars and Virgo and a little bit about the full moon. So the sun and Gemini squaring the nodes will be kind of new for this week, but it's a continuation of these stories that have been building. Mars and Leo squaring Uranus, you know, Mars-Uranus squares, as we have seen in recent history, can be pretty loud, sometimes violent, and they get your attention. Luckily, they happen and end pretty quickly. So I think it's good to just kind of look at that, maybe make some plans about the ways that you're preparing for that day. But yeah, looking forward to this week, the last full week of the sun fully in Gemini before we go to the summer solstice next week.
Yeah, enjoying the lighter evenings as we're recording later. Usually it's dark by this time recording, so it's just nice to still have the daylight to record as well as we get closer to the solstice. So here's what we're going to be looking at this week. And as always, I always struggle to get it down to 3. But when we've got 2 on the same day, it's worth just doubling up and making a note because they're 2 separate transits, what time we've got them both. So on the 11th, we've got the full moon in Sagittarius. That we've been talking as that's been applying. It's come up in a few of the transits as we saw the moon in Scorpio, just how that intensity was building and how it was affecting the transits last week. So here we come with that full moon coming into its full glory. And then on the 15th, we've got 2 at 9:46 of universal time in the morning. On the 15th, we've got Mars in Leo squaring Uranus. And then at 2:36 universal time, so again, adjust it for your own time zone, that will be the Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn. But obviously, the 2 are going to inform the others. Nothing ever happens in isolation when one thing's happening. This Sagittarius moon will be speaking to these, and everything is informing the other. One will be ruling different things. So we see them all speaking together in astrological, sky-based cosmic conversation. And that's why there's so many different threads to pull together with all of them. And it's why we've already touched on some of these as we've been speaking in the earlier weeks as well. And then on the 17th, Mars enters Virgo, and that really concludes this long retrograde that we've been talking about since the beginning of the year. When Mars started its retrograde, it went back from Leo into Cancer and then moved forward. And that's been a long time, but although it's moving forward and it's gone past its shadow, as astrologers, we see that retrograde started when Mars first entered Leo. And then it got to the degree, I think it was 6 degrees that it retrograded from, and it went back into Cancer. And then when it got back to 6 degrees, we talk about it coming out of its shadow. But really, while it's still in Leo, we can see parts of that retrograde story being tied up. And it doesn't totally conclude until Mars moves over that border into a new sign. And that's fresh new energy now for Mars.
Yeah. And just before we leave the slide, kind of what stands out to me is, you know, a lot of times in a single week, we might have, you know, the fixed placements or the fire signs, or, you know, it might be focused on one area of a chart. But if we think of the full moon in Sagittarius, the moon is in Sagittarius, the sun is in Gemini. So we have that mutable kind of pinged, which is going to kind of ping into the Pisces Virgo axis, right? The other mutable signs. And then we have Mars and Leo squaring Uranus and Taurus. Those are the fixed. So now we have the mutable and the fixed. And then that's going to affect, you know, Pluto Aquarius. It's going to affect any placements that you might have in Scorpio. It's going to affect that fixed axis. And then we have Jupiter Cancer squaring Saturn and Aries. That's the cardinal, which is also going to bring in any Capricorn placements that you have or any Libra placements that you have. So literally the whole zodiac is being touched by one of these 3, maybe 2/3 of it on the 15th, just themselves, but the sun will be in Gemini during that. So it's really like the entire chart of the transiting sky and in our natal placements will be kind of agitated by these squares and these illuminations of the lunation. And I like Mars going into Virgo, really finishing that Mars Leo story and the cleansing detoxification of getting that story over with to start something new. On the 17th, it really does feel like a good, like astrological detoxification diet to go forward in Virgo. So it just got my attention. I was like, well, pretty much everybody is going to be touched to some degree because it's hitting really all of the modalities.
Yeah, and that's such a Gemini thing as well, isn't it? That mutable nature, but also that all the things, you know, I'm going to look at everything here. I'm not going to just focus on one area of the chart. Let's bring in the whole zodiac.
Everybody's invited to the party.
Yeah, so sociable. So here we have the full moon, and this is happening on the 11th of June at
8:43 in the morning.
Yes, 8:43 standard time, which is 7:43 in universal time. And yeah, we've got this beautiful little kitty cat out in the snow, but looking quite confident. And if you know cat language, these ears are quite alert. They're looking for trouble, really. They're not happy content ears. Happy content ears are straight up.
Yeah, these ears are like the antennas are tuned into something. Maybe it doesn't realize what they're tuning into, but they are definitely alert.
Yeah, it was quite funny when I saw that. It's like, yeah, okay, it doesn't look, it's probably a bit cold and wet in that snow, but yeah, you do worry. And there's just so much going on in this chart. This is happening in the decan of Sagittarius 3, and we've got these notes here, ruled by Saturn and the Sun. And these aren't necessarily good bedfellows. The Sun is that life force that lights everything up, and Saturn we think of as cold and dark. It's the very edges of the universe. So already we've got these opposites, and Jupiter as well is that life force. Saturn is like the coldness of endings and decay and loss, and the Sun and Jupiter are life force planets. So you've got that dichotomy already happening. And we've got the keywords: weight of the world, determination, will, and endurance. That's very Saturnian, that resilience that comes from that determination and the weight of the world. I suppose you see that in the Sagittarian qualities of the quest that they can go on, but the weight that can carry. So
yeah, the tarot card for this is the 10 of Wands, which is that person that it has all of their wands kind of bound together and their head buried as they walk forward. And there is like this inability to really carry it all. And it's that determination, that's Saturnian determination to get over that line, because it is the light, as the light is dying and then being reborn new in Capricorn 1 at the winter solstice. And so, you know, we're approaching the summer solstice, but the lunation is kind of the decan of the winter solstice. So it is that tension of, you know, summer, winter, which is kind of like the Sun and Saturn's tension. But you know, it's the Sun is in Gemini, and so the Sun is reaching that height. It's striving for that height, the highest point that it will be in the sky, in the northern hemisphere, and the symbolic height in astrology at that midpoint. So, yeah, all or nothing. I like the all or nothing. It's full moons are social events. They're social times. They're usually you can't sleep very well. You have a lot of chatter going on or a lot of things to do. And sometimes having the determination and the will to get it done, you want to do all the things. You want to pollinate all the flowers. You want to invite everybody to the party. So Sag moons, you know, are usually pretty fun anyway, but a Sag full moon has that little extra, little extra bit of extra.
Yep, extra. Yeah, it's a shame it can't see Jupiter, but it does have sight of both those co-rulers of the decan. It has sight of the Sun that is opposite and trine to Saturn in Aries. So that's where its support is coming from, those decan rulers. So we always look for whether it's got that support there. And Austin Coppock calls this decan the horse's skull. Again, looking at that, the horse being that workhorse thing, and also that decay as well of holding that skull, you know, when you've got those bones that are the Saturnian thing that endures after an animal dies, I suppose. And Kira Raibo calls it resilience. And yeah, as Kira, as you've just said, we've got that 10 of Wands, that burden that you're carrying, but you're so close to being there. And what Nicola Allen, who designs these cards, says about this wildcat, you've almost made it. The end point is in sight, but in order to get there, you've just got to give everything that you've got left. Mind, body, and soul must now align to reach your goal. And you can either crumble under this pressure or use it to drive yourself forward. There's nothing in between. And be aware that with great hardship, it must be worth the end result. So ask yourself, do your goals justify the burdens that you're enduring and the sacrifices that you must make now? And it's the time to decide, you know, are you going to put things down, or are you going to see them over that finish line? And I'm seeing a grand cross here now with the nodes. So we've been talking about how the sun's coming closer to this node, but there's this cross now forming now that the moon's there. So the sun is moving into this square with the nodes, but with the moon now we've got this grand cross. So it's like this crossroads, and we spoke of that before as like a meeting with fate. It's like you can negotiate with fate at these points. Fate and fortune can be allied. The moon carries our fortune for us. So maybe there's an element where we can make decisions and change our fortune or change our fate in the decisions that we make. But there's a karmic element flowing forth from with the sun at what would be the karmic fated element that's flowing forth from the nodes would represent where the eclipses were. So what was coming in for you at the time of these eclipses that were in March and will come again in September, you're at the halfway point now between them.
Yeah.
That's what it's signifying. So some of these events that might be happening at this time are like the pivot point or the change point of the pathway that you're on and the pathway that the eclipses are guiding you onto. And it's kind of like a negotiation point, maybe, with where they're taking you, and maybe adjustments need to be made or decisions need to be made about that. And it's like negotiating with the fates about where you're going with that. And what burden you're carrying.
And also the rulers of, you know, the sun and the moon here are basically still conjoined in Cancer within those first couple of degrees of Cancer. And they can see the north node by trine, and they can see the south node by sextile, by whole sign. And so while the sun and the moon cannot see their own rulers by aversion, the nodes can. And being at that midway point between the eclipse in March, now the sun is halfway between the eclipse in March and the eclipse in September, it is that crossroads point. And maybe that's a refreshing time of clarity for mutable placements, because that's the complaint that I hear most often from clients when we kind of dig down into their chart and they have a lot of mutability, is like there's not a lot of like certainty of what direction to go, because they can kind of weigh each side and like make a case for each, you know, direction. And sometimes when things are clear, it might feel harsh. It might feel like, you know, an inability to make a choice at that crossroads moment. But that's a really good thing about a crossroads, is like there are clear directions to go, and you're given the opportunity to just make a turn or go straight and don't look back. And this fated moment with the moon and the sun being in connection and in a pretty close, you know, I mean, it's 20 degrees and 39 minutes. And so it is, you know, 2.5 degrees away from exactly squaring the nodes. That's tight enough, you know. And so looking at the mutable axis in your chart and what houses those bring up, specifically the Sagittarius house, it's like, you know, that this is where the light is being shined on. And I think that point of, is it worth the reward that you seek? Is all this effort, you know, are you doing a lot of this work and you don't feel like there's going to be much reward? That's a clear direction of just set the sticks down and just go in a new direction. It's okay to just throw them down before you reach the finish line, because after the finish line, if it still wasn't worth it, then you're going to have that much more energy that you have just wasted to prove a point. I remember I was reading this book years ago. Everyone loved the author. Everyone suggested this book, and I hated it. I just hated the story. I hated the writing. It just annoyed me. And I was really trying to push through and read it. And being a fixed sign, I was determined to finish the book. And finally, I just closed the book and I went and I just threw it in the Goodwill pile and got rid of it and never finished it and never looked back. And I'm so happy that I did that, because I was like, I didn't have to suffer anymore with that stupid book. Just because I started reading it doesn't mean I have to finish it. So If you needed to hear that, that's your sign. Like, if you know it's really not worth it, go ahead and set it down. The other end, if you really want to fight for something, you really want to see something through, it might be worth to forego balanced meals and a good night's sleep and making that social engagement so that you can work really hard to see something done, that the risk is definitely worth the reward. That's also a moment that the luminaries here in that pathway of the nodes is like, if you really want something, here's your chance to prove to yourself that you can do big things.
Yeah, you kind of see clearly what sacrifices it's asking for and exactly what that goal means to you, how much it means and what you're being asked to sacrifice to get there. I remember that point as well when I realised that I didn't have to finish a book I wasn't enjoying. I don't remember what book it was, but it's like, yeah, you can actually just close it and put it down and not ever finish it. It's such a revelation for a fixed sign. I think mutable signs are doing this all along.
I mean, granted, I have so many books that I have started and not finished that I want to, but it's different. It's almost like there was a spell cast on this stupid book. And I still see that author in bookstores and I'm like, nope.
I'm not going to read anymore. And I have that
I mentioned no names.
Well, it's like, yeah, when I'm watching something, it's like, I really don't care about these characters and I don't care what happens to them. I'm actually going to switch this off because I've got better things to do.
Yeah. Thank you for being poor writing so that I can go do something more productive with my day.
Yeah. And it's like, but it takes me an effort and it takes me a minute to realize that I need to just switch this off.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish watching this and it's, but we can do this, people, and you mutable signs are really good at that. So that is your skill. So yeah, but it may be that this is a difficult one because of the intensity of everything that's here, that it's something that's important to you, that you're being asked about, and it's something that's maybe karmic, and the decisions that you make may have heavier consequences either way, whether you decide to proceed or you decide not to. There's some heaviness there either way. But either way, your decision will be right, whether you do or you don't. Somebody said that to me one day. Whatever you decide, whether you do or you don't, you will be right. And that frees you up so much as well. Sometimes we give so much weight to our decisions, and actually, you'll be right, whatever you do. Yep. And that's okay. And
All right, what do we have next? The squares. That's a square dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got the official Saturn square Jupiter. So we have experienced this, after June 9th when Jupiter moved into Cancer. Look how fast Mercury is. I'm just shocked. This is just a couple of days after the full moon, and Mercury is already 8 degrees after where it was on the full moon. We're not talking about Mercury, but it just got my attention. So Saturn has been in Aries since May 24th, and Jupiter's been in Cancer since June 9th. So this is June 15th. This is just a couple of days after the ingress of Jupiter into Cancer, but this is the exact square. And I think that once Jupiter goes into Cancer, we'll feel it enough, especially the build up to the applying aspect of Jupiter and Saturn in that square. Jupiter is in better dignity, but Saturn has the upper hand. And so there's even that tension of, if you just imagine you have two fighters come into the room, but Jupiter doesn't know that it's supposed to be fighting, but it's already in better shape. It's like, it's worked out, it's fit, it's coming into the ring, but Saturn is there waiting to fight. So it's like, it might, to me, like catch Jupiter off guard to kind of have that. I didn't realize that was going to be this kind of a day sort of a thing, but once they get their feet under them, they're going to be better prepared. That's kind of my feeling about it. It might be clunky with that ingress of Jupiter into Cancer, and we'll feel that clunkiness and that buildup for the next 5-6 days as they perfect. But do you have the chart of the dates of when they were? You pulled this up before we started recording. Yeah. So December 21st, 2020, we had that fated Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius. I remember that day very clearly. I watched them rise together over this meadow, and there was a geodesic dome and horses, and it was gorgeous and it was clear. I remember very distinctly. But then last August, we had the first square between Gemini and Pisces. And so now we're getting the second square. The third square, the final square. And so if we think of Saturn and Pisces and then Jupiter and Gemini doesn't have as much power as it does in Cancer. So it has that going for it. And Saturn has less power in Aries than it did in Pisces. So there, again, it's kind of a flipping on its head of what the condition of these planets are, but the square still exists. after this, we're going to move into a more supportive trine, and then we'll have the opposition in 2029, 2030, which, if you think about it, 2030 feels like a long way away, but that's 5 years ago, 5 years from now. 5 years ago was when that conjunction happened, and I remember it very clearly. So 5 years from now, it's probably going to happen a lot faster than we imagine, because 2020 wasn't that long ago. And so we're at that midway point of from the conjunction to the opposition. And this last square is really this shift, because it's in a tropical cardinal sign. It is that momentum shifting of something will now begin to change. And that change will hopefully then be more supportive once Jupiter goes into fire, and it will be trining Saturn and Aries. The fire signs trine each other. So yeah, what do you think of this third and final square?
Yeah, we were looking up like what had happened on these dates, and like just a shout out to the Astro Weekly update, because on the first square, that's when we started that month, that August date. So that's quite a challenging date for us to have started under that square. But yeah, it was the Leo month that we launched under. But yeah, I mean, nobody's ever going to look at a December 2020 date and not think of COVID and airborne diseases. And we look at Aquarius, and that's what we think of. And for me, I've just remembered that when I was tracking these squares, I think I was looking at announcements of things like monkeypox and other viral diseases. And I remember seeing, although we've just looked up like what events were happening, and that didn't make the highlights of the news, but it's just come back to me that there were firsts about viral diseases happening. So I remember that monkeypox did come to the UK around that August and December dates. There were new developments around that disease spreading. So it wouldn't surprise me if viral or airborne diseases are in the news again around this June date.
Well, I wonder, because, and I just, before recording, I just looked at the exact day. I didn't look at like the days prior or the week prior. And a lot of times that build up usually get a bit more of a context. But, Jupiter was in an air sign. And so I wonder with Jupiter in a water sign, if it will also be like transmitted through, like a disease transmitted through fluid, through water.
Maybe.
Or what?
Blood, maybe.
Yeah, some sort of fluid. Yeah, blood. Yeah, because that Saturn square can just bring hardship,
Yeah. And did you want to talk about the other thing that you found about the Democrats?
Yeah. So on that day, it was August day was a Democratic convention last year when they were nominating, their candidate, and there was lots of hope that, that candidate would succeed, and she didn't. And just that tension of, of leadership and communication, and Jupiter just as like a planet of the people, and, a lot of just the themes of Jupiter kind of shifting from that Gemini all talk to then maybe Cancer of like true blood or like real cooperation, taking the lessons that we learned from just theorizing with Jupiter Gemini into something that's a bit more embodied in Jupiter Cancer.
But we were also saying, like, when something happens on this opening square, because you've got such a long cycle, like you can see the halfway cycle is 2030, so it's going to be 2040 around then before we see the close of this story, that there's a good chance that this story is only just starting, that the Democrats nominated a woman, and not only that, a mixed race woman as well. That was really symbolic and inspiring to a lot of people sort of around the globe as well.
Yeah.
Not only in America. It was really significant to many people. The hope, I mean, I know we had Barack Obama, but still it was a man. But to have a woman of mixed race was really, really significant, and the potential that she could have held. And maybe that story is just beginning, because it's an opening square, and maybe in 2030, the full moon of the Jupiter-Saturn relationship, something more will come to light about that. And then at the closing of that square, we'll see a falling away of that story and a closing of that story before it turns into a new story at the next conjunction. So it's a longer arc of a story, and it may well not be over.
Well, yeah, just looking at it just from American politics in August 2026, when they trine each other, This is going to be the midterm elections, and then 2027 will be the beginning of the presidential campaign, because America, we love to campaign for a lot longer. I know in the UK it's like 6 weeks, a glorious little short amount of time, but we milk it out because there's so much money involved in politics, and so there's so many grifters that come in and try to just make as much money. But so our political campaigns are extended. And so in 2026 is midterms, 2027 is the beginning of the presidential campaign. So yeah, it's going to be more of an aligned, fiery, empowered Jupiter, Saturn together in those fire signs. I'm really curious about that April 3rd. That square is going to be retrograde. So it's a return. It's kind of going back to fix something. And then that fully empowered July 2027 at 27 degrees. Which is pretty close to this full moon that's happening at 23 Sag, the other fire sign. You know, there's, I think that you can look at these dates just within your own life and find where these signs are and what houses they are, and just your own. But since we're talking about politics, you know, just looking at it through that lens, I feel like we're going to see some sort of shift. It's kind of an anomalous story because we only have this one square between Jupiter Cancer to Saturn Aries. You know, we had 2 with Gemini, of course, very mutable.
They both went retrograde. Saturn went retrograde on the first one and Jupiter retrograde on the second, but now they're direct.
But then we'll have 3 of the fires to really support whatever change begins to shift with this square. And I think that in itself is like, a square is not easy. It's the nature of Mars. It's confronting something to be overcome. And so what are we confronting within the Aries Cancer houses individually and then collectively? Because if we can face it with bravery and protection and wanting the security and long-term change, long-term shifting with that Saturn, I feel like then it can then become supportive for us through the fire aspects, because the trine is the nature of Jupiter. Like Jupiter loves to trine things.
Yeah. Okay. So then we've just got Mars into Virgo, ending that retrograde story. So it's another good time. We've had a few punctuation points where we could reflect on what our Mars retrograde story might have been. So this is on the 17th of June at 9:35 British Standard Time. So that's 8:35 in Universal Time. So again, you'd need to adjust it. It may well be the day before if you're more than 8 hours, 7 hours behind Universal Time. But we see that ingress into Virgo, and it's co-present with the South Node. So again, a bit more karmic and opposite the moon that's co-present with the North Node.
I like this is happening on Mars Day. Like even West Coast, this will be like 1:30 in the morning. So, you know, on Mars's day, we have Mars going into like a fresh new sign. Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Mars and Virgo, having Mars Virgo natally. So it's not all that bad.
No, and for the ingress, it's going into Mercury's temple. It's grounded. It's a place of service as well. Virgo likes the details and how can it serve? And it's mutable. It's earth. I mean, mutable. We all sometimes talk about double-bodied as well, you know, having two natured. It's receptive and slower. So again, Mars has to slow down a bit here. He's had a lot of experience of that in watery Cancer. And now he finds his ruler is in watery Cancer. So he's still having an experience and maybe some memories coming through from that watery Cancer place of, oh yeah, I remember that. Spent a lot of time there. So some memories of that story may still be coming through, but he's like transmuting them, alchemizing them a little bit in Virgo and using them to be of service. And he likes to bring us courage and action and passion and bring us a focus. I mean, I always have more energy, and I tend to like get all my files organized and my desk organized and everything when the moon's in Virgo, when Mercury's in Virgo, or Mars is in Virgo. It's like things get organized and done that I may have been putting off. It's a good time to do that. And sometimes you just don't have the energy or don't want to do it. So watch when these planets go in and just notice how you just suddenly start doing this stuff.
Yeah, if you look at the symbol of Virgo, you know, it's that M, and then it has kind of the loop, as opposed to Mercury or Scorpio has like the scorpion tail or the arrow, the point. And just that loop, it feels kind of like that yin movement of like going down, like bringing something from the air and bringing it to the ground, having that Mercury-ness of it, but bringing it to Earth. It also just reminds me of like needlework. So like cross stitch or sewing or knitting or crochet, something to do with your hands, which keeping your hands busy during Mars and Virgo would be my suggestion. Doing something with your hands, getting your nails done, gardening, doing collage, like cutting with scissors, sewing, getting into cross stitch, doing the little, I don't know what it's called, but it's like the little meticulous kind of gluing of those dots to make like these beautiful pictures. Like keeping your hands very busy during Mars and Virgo is like a way to channel the energy of Mars through you and get it out so it doesn't build up and be pent up, and have something then tangible and earthy sense like to show for it too. I think that Mars and Virgo likes to have something to show for all of its efforts, and it can be kind of a productive time. Yeah, getting rid of old papers, shredding, like the satisfaction of shredding paper is a very Mars Virgo thing, as opposed to Mars and Leo, which is like get your burn pile out and just burn the papers. Mars and Virgo likes the satisfaction of seeing the evenness of a good shredded paper file. But I mentioned early at the beginning about it being kind of a detoxification of that Leo, the retrograde across Cancer Leo. It's fully out of that now, and so what new, fresh, just physical diet, can you do to kind of cut out sugar, excess salt, processed foods, processed meats, take out, like have like a budgeted food diet for like 10 days just to see how your body feels. Drink water before you have your coffee, like all those really functional health things that we associate with Virgo, giving Mars something to do with it, like keeping track of your food or weighing yourself each morning or limiting coffee, not having caffeine, in the middle of the day, that sort of a thing. Like give Mars a job and you can ride it a lot more gracefully than if you just let him run haywire.
Yeah, I do find, especially these signs where Mars doesn't necessarily have a lot of dignity, it helps to give Mars a job, like you say, because Mars will find something to do and you might not necessarily like what he finds to do. So if you can decide what needs to be done, what you need doing, and give that job to Mars, that's a lot more productive. I always decide what he needs to do before he goes into Virgo.
Yeah. Give him a job when he walks in the door before he just starts rummaging around. It's also got a really great supportive sextile from Jupiter there. That's like the tightest aspect that it has. It can see its ruler Mercury by whole sign, but it's quite a number of degrees away. But I do like the sextile from Jupiter, and we'll have that just by whole sign the entire month of June and into July.
Yeah, that's really nice. The only other thing is that he's averse to Aries, where he's ruling all those planets. So that leaves these planets a little bit unsupervised, which will be interesting. That Saturn, especially because although that Saturn-Jupiter square has happened, once Mars can't see Saturn, it leaves that Saturn unsupervised. So we've got Saturn and Neptune up to their own devices.
They do have anticia with each other, but it's not going to be until Mars is much later in the sign before they share anticia. It'll have it first with Chiron, if you want to count that. Yeah, for the most part, Saturn and Neptune are kind of on their own, especially after, the sun can see Aries. The sun is the exaltation ruler of Aries, but it will pretty soon square them. So like maybe the sun won't be that much of a help. But yeah, Mars will have anticia probably closer to July before it changes into Libra. We end the week. To me, it was square dance. Like that's kind of kept what going on. It's like swing your partner round and round.
That's brilliant. So yeah, should we just leave that as square dance?
Or crossroads, because crossroads are, you have four squares, and when you have four squares together, you have a crossroads in between. So the squares bring us to the crossroads moment, and maybe that's what it is like just having those moments of fate where we have to choose.
Yeah.
And they can be tough, but they're very helpful in retrospect.
Yeah. And it helps us to be forewarned about this and just to start leaning into that and be aware of that when events start happening or thoughts start arriving, and knowing that that's what's going on as well.
You know what? We didn't talk about Mars Uranus square, did we?
Oh.
Can we go back?
Yes.
Because in the beginning, we were like, we'll warn you. We went right to the Saturn square Jupiter. Yeah. Well, here's the chart. So Mars at the anaretic degree in Leo and squaring Uranus and Taurus. Uranus will move into Gemini and then go back in. But this square we've seen the square just, in mundane events as being moments of violent attack and really coming out of nowhere. And so just on that day, on Sunday, the 15th, we have the Jupiter Saturn square, and then we have this Uranus Leo square. So just that whole day it's a loud day in astrology. It's also the middle of the month of June. June has 30 days, the Ides of June. This is like a crossroads again of the month. And both of these squares happening simultaneously. I think that we might look back and see the Jupiter Saturn as having more longevity as far as like the shifts that happen to us. But the Uranus Mars might just feel louder. It might be hard to dissect one from the other. Maybe they will be related.
Quite often, because this is a fixed sign, the fixed signs like to sustain, so it can be something that has a longer story. Wow, that event, whereas the Jupiter Saturn square is cardinal, so it can be fast or initiating, but then it can change, or it can be multiple things, whereas the fixed can tend to be, where are they? There and there. Although it's sudden with Uranus, it's sudden or unexpected, or it can be insights as well. But with Mars, it's more likely to be like a violent event, or maybe a natural disaster or something like that. With Uranus being in Earth, it makes you think of like landslides or volcanoes even erupting or something like that. And then
earthquake.
Yeah, earthquakes, things that then play out over a long time, take a long time to clear up, and stay in the news for a long time as well, which is sad to talk about, especially ahead of time.
Yeah, because the sun is in the crossroads too of the nodes. This day is Father's Day in the States, at least. And so like all the themes of father and solar figures and leadership, all that really being challenged. The sun square the nodes, Mars square Uranus, Jupiter square Saturn. We think of the masculine planets, those are kind of it.
Yes.
Maybe not Uranus, but the sun, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, those are all, they have like a masculine tint to them. Venus and the moon are kind of they're in their own square, but not for too long, because the moon moves so quickly. And Venus is past the square with Pluto, but it really does feel like a disruption of solar energy. I mean, if we just looked at the sun in the path of the nodes, but the disruption, the action, the quickness of a Mars square Uranus might be like the shinier, louder, more obvious one. And yeah. I'm glad I remember that. I was like, I feel like we missed something, like a big bang.
Yeah, we did. It was important to add that in.
That's how we'll end the week.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got the crossroads, and maybe there's a cross emoji or a road emoji. I'll have to look. I'll put the emoji in the notes and see what we can find. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. And I should remember to say, if you enjoy this, please do remember to like, subscribe, and comment if you've enjoyed this with the emoji. And we'll be back. I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and with me is Christa from Practical Astros. And we'll be back looking at the 18th to the 25th of June next week. So thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.